In the newsletter this week, you saw that I'm going to preach on the apocalypse of Peter. So I'd like you to grab your Bibles and turn to the apocalypse of Peter. No? Anyone? Anyone ever heard of the apocalypse of Peter before this week? Religious studies majors? No? Maybe Sarah, had you heard? From me. So I was going to preach on the apocalypse of Peter, and I'm going to say a few words about it. But I'm going to tell you a story first. This week I went to study leave to Illinois, the land of my raising up, to be with my mom and to support my sisters. My mom's beloved is in a rehabilitation center, and it's causing her a lot of pain, and my sisters have to drive around a lot because my mom is older and doesn't really drive. And so I went to do some study and to support my family. And I decided I would go to Aurora because I had to be at the airport at like 4 o'clock to go to Chicago, like 4 a.m. And so I decided to stay overnight at some like La Quinta Inn or something. And I slept in that place. And as I was sleeping in that place and going to get up early, someone decided that my back driver's side window was too comfortable as a hole in its little, and wanted to bash it through to put it out of its comfort zone. And they took my man purse. I have a man purse, my little briefcase, $49.95 at the Office Depot. I don't know what it's worth now, but they're going to find out what it's worth now. I mean, maybe $4, Sarah. I don't know, $5. But the only thing in that book, only thing in that bag was a library book called Journeys to Heaven and Hell in the Early Christian Tradition. Yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about. And so like, I'm reading that, and I love that book, this is a guy from North Carolina who's a religious studies scholar, like my friend Jeff, remember a couple of weeks ago, my friend Jeff, he's a religious studies scholar at UCCS who's an atheist. Same Bart Ehrman is at Carolina and is also an atheist, but he loves to write about religious stuff. And so that was all that's in the bag. You would literally have to pay somebody to take that book. You know what I mean? Like you would literally. And so inside that book, there are descriptions of what Dante and before the Christian tradition, like Homer and others talk about the afterlife, And then it gets to the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition. And really in the Jewish tradition, there's no kind of afterlife talk. So when you think about Jesus and that rabbi Jesus and that teacher Jesus believe in hell because it just wasn't part of that tradition. But there were some hints. And then from that Orphic, from that Greek kind of tradition, this idea of hell and the afterlife comes along and influences Christian thought. And in Genesis, there's a book called the Book of Watchers or something that's very Game of Thrones, Book of Watchers or something. And it's mentioned. And in Genesis 6, the flood, the flood, God comes down and floods the people. And most of us, when we were in Sunday school, learned from that felt biblical interpretation text, about Noah and all those things. And most of us learned that it was because humans were like naughty and God was like, I'm going to send this through you, and then there's a rainbow and you're going to be fine and I won't do that again and all that stuff, right? But I get excitable. I would have been a real hostile, you know what I mean? Like I get excitable. Um, but Bart Ehrman says that this is what's going on in that story. That in that first, so all of Genesis from 1 to 11 is mythology. And it's sort of prehistorical myth. And so what's happening is that God has this vision that the heavens and earth will be fluid. There will be kind of interactions. There'll be kind of a lot of cross things, cross, like, and then all these, like, I think they're angels, come down and start reproducing with humans. And this is what God's pissed off about. This was a violation of the agreement that God had with the angels and humanity. And that's what's being punished, is these angels got a little out of their lane, if you will. And then Bart goes on and he's describing other ways that that heaven and hell gets imagined in the early Christian tradition. And then you get to the apocalypse of Peter. And that is no joke. It didn't make it into the Bible, as we've already discovered this morning. It was written a couple hundred years later. And all of these texts were found not too long ago. And in the apocalypse of Peter, there are all these sins listed, all these things that you can do that are really not good. And corresponding to the sin is your punishment for eternity. So there's a lot of hanging by your nether regions. I know, this is the PG-13 part of this sermon today. But there's a lot of like graphic stuff happening. A lot of graphic punishment. And the apocalypse of Peter comes in all of these writings that talk about the afterlife, what they're trying to accomplish is helping people live a life of integrity and wholeness and well-being and shalom. You know, shalom, this word, this beautiful Jewish word, shalom. And they go to such lengths. And we know that life is complicated. Right now, we know, you heard that litany of all those difficult things. We know that it gets complicated. Isn't it wonderful to be part of a faith tradition where you don't have to imagine all the ways you can miss the mark and dream up all the ways that you're going to pay for it throughout eternity, right? Wonderful to not have to go to those lengths. What we try to do is think about a life of integrity without supernaturalism, without a God that's far away who's just waiting for you to screw up so that you can be punished, but rather in human dignity and human rights and human vitality, we work and we live so that all might flourish. Yesterday, I think you all know that my wife is a pastor in the United Church of Christ, the Congregationalist, and I won't bore you with how the Congregationalists and the Unitarians are first cousins and how we came out of the same tradition. But, we write OWL together, sex education, curriculum, and all that stuff together. And I was the hospitality person for a wedding. And Marta's a radical. She's getting a feminist a doctorate in feminist theology up at ILIF, School of Theology at the University of Denver. And all over are these safe space, signs with gay and lesbian, like pride flags and all that. And this wedding was not part of the UCC, was not part of our tradition. And they went around, so angry, they went around and took down all of those signs. What we are here to do is be about human flourishing. Marta wasn't at the church yesterday. I was the hospitality person. But she went out in her collar to protest Roe v. Wade overturn. And she has this little sign that says, "This pastor is pro-choice. This pastor is pro-choice too." And my 15-year-old Nina, we call her Niners, had the other one that said abortion is health care. This morning I read in the Gazette that those Catholic bishops are going to go after the Colorado law that makes it accessible here. They are going to fight those same bishops that fight against death with dignity, that fight against same-sex marriages. Well, we have a message. I have a message, and I trust you do too, for those bishops. Your hate will not win. Your hate will not win. Love will win. Love always wins. Radical equality will win, human flourishing will win, and we will fight back with everything we've got. Unitarians, Congregationalists, Episcopalians, some Baptists, some atheists, some humanists, some people who don't know what to make of religion at all, and I don't know, maybe. I haven't read the Apocalypse of Peter lately. What do I know? We will find our allies in this fight, and we'll stand for justice. 2 months ago, I gathered a group of 40 people, and we had a protest. When the thing was leaked, and then we had a little Saturday gathering down at the park. Those bishops, like the Apocalypse of Peter folks, believe that they have God on their side, that they know God's will, that they're sitting at the right hand of God, knowing what God is asking them to do and thinking. I spent 7 years in a Catholic hospital. I know that these priests and these bishops believe they're sitting at the right hand of God in the gates of heaven. They're not. Sarah looked at me like, are they? No, they're not. And we, as Unitarian Universalists, are not going to appeal to such God's will language. We are going to appeal to human dignity and human rights. I'll end with this. Right? Love will win. Two dogs and a cat went to heaven. I think I heard this joke here, but I don't know. It's not a joke. Two dogs, and so the first dog was like this black lab, and God says, "What did you do in this world?" And the dog says, "I just loved on my people." And God's like, "Come, sit next to me." The other one's like a German shepherd. "What'd you do in this world?" And the German shepherd, "I protected my people." "Come, sit next to me. You did good, right?" And the cat, "What did you do in this world?" "I don't know, but you're sitting in my seat." Love will win. We're in this fight. We're going to find our friends. This is not the end of the story. God bless you and keep you.